The sentiment out there is that, generally speaking, the industry would like to see an industry body that looks after joint research on behalf of the industry. There are certain camps who do not agree with that point of view. So there are stakeholders who do not want to see an industry body. But the point being is, if you have an industry body, how do you fund that? Because the main funders have stepped away from SARF. And taking SARF forward in any other form or guise would require funding. So at the end of the day, it really comes down to who's willing to step in, who's willing to contribute those funds. And from the research, marketers have indicated that they might be willing to do that. The issue comes with implementation, the how and when that happens still needs to be answered, and I think industry needs to engage, the various stakeholders need to engage on that point, and SARF needs to engage with its membership on that. Well, as far as funding is concerned, we obviously ask questions from all stakeholders whether they'd be willing to contribute towards the research and whether they would be willing to contribute towards an industry body. Point being that we need to understand or gauge the level of or appetite that there is out there for funding a future body, whether it's a SARF or a repositioned SARF or a whole new body altogether. And out of that, if you are then willing to fund an industry body, you would need to engage them on the mechanism in terms of collecting those funds from them. And it's just, they're basically worldwide, there are 2 or 3 models which are used, which is either a levy. The levy system is kind of unique to South Africa. No one else really uses a levy, but you can ask the agencies to take a portion of the billings that come through them, siphon that off and pay that into the industry body. You can ask the marketers to pay directly, so not through the agency. Or you can use a method of calculating the contribution similar to a levy system where you take a percentage of the ad spend. Somewhere around 70% of marketers have said that they would be willing to contribute towards an industry body. But then when it comes to the mechanism, not exact figures, but somewhere around a third of them suggested that they would prefer the direct billing method, and a third of them suggested they would prefer a levy system where the agencies collect it on their behalf. So on the mechanism itself, there is no consensus, and I think you're probably going to end up with some kind of a mixed model in the beginning, just to get things off the ground. You need to accommodate everyone. There are also, of course, marketers who don't use agencies, who directly deal with media owners, and you need to find a way to capture those funds in one way or another. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done around who funds and the mechanism for funding. But at least we now have a sense of if there is interest. If this report, for instance, indicated that marketers are not interested in funding, you would close the doors of SARF and you would walk away, cut your damages. But now we understand that there is appetite. They now, as a SARF, as a body, needs to go and engage with those stakeholders and see how they can implement something that would secure the future of SARF, given a specific mandate. Well, it wasn't the majority of them, but there were a significantly higher number that said they can contribute towards a body rather than contribute towards the research. I think it was about 35% of them that said they are willing to contribute towards an industry body. Their argument being that the research is hugely expensive and they can't really make a meaningful contribution to the research. They simply can't afford it. Their fee structure, their billing structure, their business model do not support it, like in the UK, where agencies have built the cost of research into their fee structure. Here we haven't. The issue of integrity stems from the fact that we're moving from one system to another. In the past we had SARF, who was governing and overseeing that process. So there was a lot of trust and faith in SARF, rightly or wrongly, that it was ensuring that the data coming out of that had integrity and was reliable. Of course, SARF didn't serve any particular interest, so there was no reason for it to influence their research or make any decisions that's not in the best interest of the industry. The concern now is that media owners, as you've heard from them in the meeting, they are now footing the bill. And there's a concern that there might be an argument from them being that, well, we're footing the bill, therefore we will determine what questions go in, what questions are in and out. And there's a concern over time there might be an opportunity for scope creep. So if there's a question that's on your table, whether the data should point in this direction or that direction, you might say, well, me as a media owner, this question suits my needs better, so I prefer that option. So over time there's scope creep. And it purely stems from the fact that there are one or two stakeholders who are footing the bill and who might be in a position to influence the data. The reality is, I think, slightly different. That I think there is a structure in place now to oversee the establishment surveys, design, and a tender process. So I don't think those fears are necessarily warranted. What it does speak to for me, though, is the level of communication that's happening on the industry level. Is if these concerns are being raised on an ongoing basis, why are they not being addressed? And I think that is something that the joint industry committees, the media owners, the marketers and the agencies need to get together, and they need to collectively address these things, and all the fears need to be allayed and concerns addressed. Going forward, the SARF board will have to look at this data. They need to understand where the opportunities lie, who they need to talk to in terms of should they decide to take SARF forward, who do they need to talk to for funding, for instance. If they want to take care of the establishment survey design, who are their stakeholders that they need to engage to in terms of that and the technical requirements and the wants and needs of the industry. I think going forward there'll be a number of scenarios put on the table before the SARF board. In the main they need to decide whether they think it's worthwhile continuing with SARF as a body, given the information they've now received, or not to. If they decide to carry on with SARF, there are a number of permutations they need to take into account, where the funding would come from, how it would be collected, how do you implement it, when do you start implementing it, those kinds of questions. What is the mandate? Who are the new members? Because a number of media owners have resigned from SARF. Would they be willing to come back as members for the sake of joint research, or would they rather sit outside? So those kind of conversations now need to start happening and put into some kind of a strategy which then implemented.